You know that quiet, almost sinister calm that hangs over a meticulously planned American suburb? The kind where every lawn is scalped to the same height, and the color palette is exclusively beige adjacent or depressed earth tone. Yeah, that's where I live. Or, as I like to call it, the petri dish, where petty grievances ferment into full-blown community legislation. My name is Leo. I'm 40-something, a graphic designer who works from home, which means my main job is watching the neighborhood through my giant bay window and crafting satirical internal monologues. My co-pilot in this suburban safari is Bear. Bear is technically a Newfoundland, but when you look at him, all 160 pounds of black, shaggy, drool-producing mass, you think less Newfoundland and more woolly mammoth that lost its way to the Ice Age and decided to just crash on my couch. He's a majestic beast, a gentle giant, an absolute unit of fluff and affection. He's also possibly the least intimidating creature on the planet, given that his favorite activities include sleeping on his back and crying if you stop petting him for more than 3 seconds. The day it all started, Bear was the epitome of canine responsibility. I'd actually spent $50 on a bright, neon yellow reflective safety vest. I mean, if you can't make them small, you can at least make them visible. So there we were. Me, slightly cynical and nursing a lukewarm coffee, and Bear strutting along the sidewalk like a heavily armored furry brick, trying to figure out if the fire hydrant ahead was truly a friend or just a highly suspicious piece of public infrastructure. The air was still. The birds were singing their little fascist tunes of suburban harmony. And then I saw her. Susan. I swear, Susan doesn't walk. She patrols. She moves with the controlled, aggressive stiffness of a highly weaponized Roomba. Mid-50s, everything about her is perfectly manicured, from the French tips on her nails to the terrifyingly straight line of her haircut. She's the neighborhood watch commander, which means she monitors the movements of anyone under the age of 60 and documents the precise moment a fallen leaf constitutes a public hazard. She rounded the corner, spotted Bear, who was busy trying to lick a tiny pebble, and her eyes narrowed into those 2 little slits that usually preface a formal HOA citation. "Excuse me, sir?" The volume was entirely disproportionate to the distance. It was the voice of someone who believes volume equals moral authority. I sighed and pulled Bear to a gentle halt. "Morning, Susan. Lovely day for whatever that shrub is." She ignored my landscaping comment entirely, focusing her entire, judgmental gaze on my dog. Bear, sensing the tension, responded by producing a massive, silver string of drool that hit the sidewalk with a wet thwack. "That animal of yours," she announced, the word animal dripping with disgust, "is highly intimidating." I actually blinked. Intimidating? Susan, he's a land manatee. He just drooled on his own paw and is currently contemplating whether he can digest a piece of concrete. He's wearing a safety vest. That's peak responsibility, legally speaking. "I don't care about the vest. He's large. His presence is unnerving. He violates the visual harmony of this street. I've had multiple verbal complaints." She clutched a highly polished designer handbag like it was a holy relic. "He needs to be muzzled immediately." Now, a normal person would argue, plead, or maybe just apologize and walk away. But I'm Leo. And when someone invokes visual harmony to describe a dog walk, my internal sarcasm generator kicks into overdrive. "Visual harmony," I repeated slowly. "So, you're saying Bear, in his professional-grade safety gear, is aesthetically offensive?" "He's a public nuisance, and I'm documenting it for the HOA right now." She pulled out a sleek smartphone and started snapping pictures of Bear, who looked genuinely puzzled by the attention. I could practically hear her caption, "Exhibit A, woolly menace engages in threatening stare-down with curbing." I decided to stop arguing and start planning. "Understood, Susan. I hear your concerns about intimidation and the aesthetic quality of my dog. Have a harmonious day." I pulled Bear away, who took one last, longing sniff of the fire hydrant. Walking home, I was vibrating with a specific, highly focused rage. Not true anger, but the kind of delicious, creative indignation that only HOA disputes can generate. The problem wasn't Bear's size. The problem was Susan's need for absolute, suffocating control. She wanted to dictate what I could walk and how. Then, the spark hit. The most brilliant, most beautifully absurd idea I'd ever had. If Bear was intimidating, I had to make him actively, aggressively non-intimidating. If his presence was unnerving, I would replace his presence with something utterly, objectively laughable. And if she complained about his appearance, I would make his appearance impossible to regulate. I sprinted inside, practically shoving Bear through the back door. I spent 2 hours confirming the loophole. Pets must be leashed and controlled. Zero mention of pet apparel. Zero mention of aesthetics. I then went on the warpath, ordering dozens of full-body, plush, and utterly ridiculous costumes via every rush delivery option available. The first one arrived that evening. I laid it out on the living room rug. It was perfect. The next morning, I buckled him into the foam bun. He looked like a giant, low-rider dachshund that ate too many tacos, except he was still a Newfoundland. He was a cosmic hot dog, complete with a mustard and relish swirled foam drizzle across his back. Bear, bless his heart, seemed merely confused, but totally game. "Ready, Wolf Titanic?" I whispered. "It's time to restore some disharmony." I timed the walk precisely for 9:02 a.m., Susan's peak pruning time. We marched past her prize-winning petunias. She looked up, clipper in hand. She saw me. She saw the giant, sentient Frankfurter trotting politely beside me. Her eyes widened. Her jaw dropped. She dropped the clippers. Then she dropped her clipboard. She was speechless. The ultimate, silent victory. Operation Ridiculous Redress was officially launched. That first victory, the look on Susan's face when confronted by the cosmic hot dog, tasted like the finest artisanal revenge. It wasn't enough, though. A one-off stunt is just a prank. A daily, escalating, fully documented commitment to absurd apparel? That's performance art. That's war. My internal rules were simple. The costumes had to achieve 3 things. 1. Maximum visual confusion. 2. Absolute compliance with leash laws. And 3. Daily escalation. I knew I couldn't stop. The moment I quit, Susan wins. I formalized the whole thing, starting a hardback journal I named the Public Safety Transformation Project log. Each entry had a photo, taken on my phone, the date, the costume name, and a satirical risk assessment. Day 2. The Giant Strawberry. Risk assessment: low. Threat level posed by fruit: minimal unless allergic. Compliance: excellent. Day 3. The Ballerina. Risk assessment: moderate. Risk of involuntary pirouettes. Threat level posed by tutus: 0. Day 4. The Lion. Mane only. Risk assessment: high for embarrassment. Threat level: looks less like a lion, more like a failed theatrical production. Day 5. The UPS delivery guy. Risk assessment: extreme. Threat level: high. He might accidentally deliver something to the wrong house. The sheer irony of Susan being afraid of a delivery dog was delicious. I spent hours organizing the logistics. Bear, thankfully, is a good sport. He just sees clothes as a temporary, slightly warm hug. But costumes alone weren't enough. They were a brilliant defensive tactic, but I needed an offensive strike. Something permanent. Something that would solidify dog-based chaos in the neighborhood for years to come. I'd been flirting with the idea of opening a niche business when I saw the vacant florist shop, Petal Pusher, 3 doors down, directly across the street from Susan's manicured beige kingdom. I knew. It was fate. My vision: the Barkery, a combination boutique pet treat shop and human coffee bar, dog-safe ice cream, gourmet biscuits, lattes for the stressed-out owners, maximum dog presence, maximum fun. I bought the property. It was a wreck. Leaky roof, ancient plumbing, electrical wiring that looked like a bird's nest after a lightning strike. It needed a full commercial refit, which meant noise, dust, and, critically, contractors. The day the property officially closed, I taped up my sign. I didn't use vinyl or printing. I used a giant piece of foam board and neon marker pens. The sign screamed, "The Barkery, artisan dog, ice cream, and human coffee, coming soon. Maximum dog presence guaranteed." I watched from my bay window as Susan did her afternoon patrol. She spotted the sign and froze. She pulled out her Bluetooth headset and started yelling into it while furiously scrubbing her front walk with a brush. Her face looked like she'd just realized her entire street was about to smell like wet Labrador and artisanal peanut butter for the rest of eternity. I swear that single sign visibly aged her by about 6 months. The battle had escalated from clothing to zoning. The costumes continued, tracking Susan's spiraling reactions. On Ballerina Day, Bear in his pink tutu looked like a fluffy, angry warthog in drag. He struggled a little with the balance, making his walk a slightly awkward shuffle. Susan saw him and did a quick 180, marching determinedly in the opposite direction. A win, but a passive one. On Lion Mane Day, the intentionally bad one, Susan actually paused. I thought she might laugh, but instead she just narrowed her eyes. She clearly realized that my humor was the weapon, and she hated that I was enjoying this. The UPS costume was a masterpiece of irony. Susan hates delivery drivers, claiming they drive too fast, and their large brown trucks violate the aforementioned visual harmony. Seeing a dog the size of a small pony in a tiny brown shirt and hat, which Bear constantly tried to shake off, pushed her over the edge. That afternoon, a registered letter arrived. Susan's first formal, documented attack, typed on a template letterhead from a lawyer named Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, but real. It cited visual pollution, intentional malice, and ongoing emotional distress. She demanded the cessation of the costumes and the immediate removal of my unauthorized commercial signage. I framed the letter and hung it on my fridge. Above it, I wrote, "Susan's first surrender." The renovation was the key to victory, which meant dealing with contractors. I needed someone competent, quick, and, most importantly, someone who would not run away screaming when confronted by a dog dressed as a giant broccoli stalk. I interviewed 3 candidates. The first one was polite, but kept glancing nervously at Bear. The second just kept talking about synergy and maximizing the kitchen footprint. Then there was Mike. Mike the Marine Kowalski. Mid-50s, gruff, and perpetually wearing a clean but permanently oil-stained Carhartt jacket. His expression was deadpan, like he hadn't experienced joy since 1998, but he had a reputation for efficiency. I met him at the empty florist shop. Bear was dressed as a fluffy yellow canary. "Mr. Peterson," Mike grunted, taking notes on a tiny pad. "Leo is fine. Mike, this is Bear. He's today's canary. He's the head of quality control and whimsy. He will occasionally try to chew on anything that smells like wood or metal." Mike glanced at the canary dog, who let out a low, rumbling sigh and slumped onto the floor. Mike didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He didn't even raise an eyebrow. "Got it," Mike said, his voice flat. "Industrial-grade refrigeration needs a dedicated 220 line and a floor drain for the melt-off. I saw the architectural plans. They're fine. Look, Leo, I've seen things in Fallujah that were less absurd than your dog wearing a bath toy. Can we talk square footage, or is he going to try and fly away?" I almost wept with relief. This man was my perfect, cynical co-conspirator. I ran through the pitch: industrial refrigeration, specialized drainage for the multiple dog sinks, a custom paw print-themed tile floor. Mike quoted the price. It was high, but fair. His only follow-up comment was purely practical. "Don't let the canary dog chew on the copper lines. Tastes funny, but it's expensive. I'll start demolition Monday." The deal was sealed with a handshake. The Barkery renovation was a go, ensuring a constant, noisy, and visually jarring presence across from Susan's house. I had my contractor, and I knew the construction noise would drive Susan crazier than 1,000 tutus ever could. Monday morning, the day Mike Kowalski's crew arrived. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The glorious, chaotic roar of a backhoe tearing up the crumbling asphalt in front of the old florist shop. It wasn't just noise. It was the sound of Susan's carefully curated suburban tranquility being aggressively violated by the relentless march of commerce and heavy machinery. It was, I maintain, a symphony. The construction site, now officially the future home of the Barkery, was immediately transformed into ground zero for noise, dust, and, critically, Bear's daily public safety transformation. Mike, Tony the plumber, and Javier the electrician quickly realized that Bear's ridiculous attire was not a fun weekend hobby. It was a deeply ingrained, almost ceremonial aspect of my life. The crew adapted quickly, though they used Bear's outfits primarily for cynical commentary. Day 6. Giant Strawberry. Bear looked like a cartoon character that had fallen into a fruit basket. Tony the plumber arrived, saw the dog, and physically winced. "Hey, fruit dog," he muttered. "Don't touch my sawzall. You look flammable." Day 7. The sushi roll. Bear was a giant California roll. Rice texture, avocado green, and a pink ginger bow tie. Javier the electrician spent the entire day staring at him, convinced the wasabi green patch held some kind of bad spiritual energy. Day 8. Medieval Knight. A ridiculous felt helmet and armor, which, due to Bear's size, looked less valiant and more like a massive, furry ottoman that was very confused about the Crusades. The helmet kept slipping over his eyes. Mike only referred to him as Sir Lancelot of the Slobber. Day 10. A pile of pancakes. Layered foam circles with a fake butter pat and syrup headband. This was the one that achieved maximum contractor approval. I caught Mike taking a clandestine photo with his work phone. He denied it instantly, of course, but the small, telltale twitch at the corner of his mouth was all the victory I needed. Tony the plumber, a man who viewed his PVC and copper as sacred artifacts, was tasked with installing the complex drainage for the new industrial 3-bay sink. He was already having a bad day. The existing copper lines were ancient and routed like spaghetti. Tony rounded the corner of the kitchen and let out a sound somewhere between a groan and a strangled cry. Bear, the giant strawberry, was happily sitting in a pile of brand-new PVC pipe fittings, watching Tony with deep, unblinking adoration. His giant head, topped with green felt leaves, was right in the middle of Tony's workspace. "Leo!" Tony bellowed, throwing his hands up, scattering a few elbows and couplings. "I can't work. I'm trying to set the grade on the drain here, and I have a giant piece of fruit trying to eat my tape measure. Can you put him outside? I swear he just licked a coupling." I strolled over, coffee in hand, admiring the pristine redness of the strawberry costume. "That, Tony, is Barry, the Department of Produce's highly decorated safety inspector. He's running quality control on the water pressure, ensuring maximum freshness for the artisanal dog ice cream." I leaned in conspiratorially. "Look, he's structurally sound, but emotionally fragile. You have to understand, he feels a kinship with things that are brightly colored and round. Just talk him through the soldering process, gently. Maybe compliment his stem." Tony's face was a road map of suffering. "Structurally sound? He's foam, Leo, and I think he just chewed on my level. I'm charging you for emotional distress, man, and maybe for a new level if he ate the last one." "That's a small price to pay for compliance, Tony," I countered, handing him a cold soda. "Remember, Susan is still out there, demanding silence and beige. We fight her with sound, color, and plumbing excellence. Just think of Bear as a highly paid, very fluffy apprentice, one who happens to be wearing a costume that mocks the entire concept of a serious plumbing job." Tony threw his hands up in defeat, but a small smirk played on his lips. "Fine. But if he gets in the way of the shark bite connectors, I'm sending the bill to the Department of Produce." He got back to work, muttering about dogs, drain traps, and the general state of the American aesthetic. He was officially a convert. Susan, infuriated by the constant noise and the visual chaos, escalated her tactics. She realized the HOA was too slow. She started dropping by the site, demanding to see permits and questioning the necessity of every nail and beam. It happened on medieval night day. Bear, with his felt helmet askew, was standing next to a stack of drywall. "Mr. Peterson!" Susan screeched, waving her dreaded binder with frantic energy. "The noise is excessive, and that thing, gesturing wildly at the night dog, is a clear violation of public decency. It looks like a poorly attended Renaissance fair. I have photos documenting that children are pointing, and it is distracting drivers." I stepped out from behind a sheet of plywood, looking annoyingly calm. "Susan, we are strictly within the legal decibel limits for commercial renovation between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. We are soundproofing the back wall, ironically, to protect your peace. As for Bear, he's simply demonstrating our commitment to local history preservation. Would you prefer the ballerina outfit again? Because I have that option ready, though I worry about the structural integrity of the tool during high winds. I demand you cease this circus." This is where Mike, the genius of professional detachment, stepped in. He wasn't doing it for me, but to keep his crew safe and the site moving. He stepped between Susan and the dumpster, cutting off her line of sight to Bear. "Ma'am," Mike's voice was utterly flat, betraying no emotion. "You are standing on a potential tripping hazard. We are about to load rebar, If you're not a licensed safety inspector or a licensed contractor, you need to be 15 feet from the staging area. Your red shoes are a liability." Susan bristled. "This dog, Mike, is harassing the street." Mike gave Bear a quick, uninterested glance. "The night dog is currently blocking my view of the forklift path. Leo, move the feudal menace to the exclusion zone. Ma'am, you need to clear the perimeter." Susan was powerless against Mike's terrifying, OSHA-compliant professionalism. She couldn't argue about safety with a man who looked like he ate nails for breakfast. She stomped her foot, clutched her binder, and retreated, defeated by Mike's terrifying, bureaucratic efficiency. I knew then she wasn't done. The call to the police was coming soon. Javier the electrician, bless his heart, was still my wild card. He was struggling with the ancient electrical panel, which looked like it had been installed during the Eisenhower administration and then neglected by 3 generations of squirrels. He was already superstitious. Bear, dressed as the decadent pile of pancakes, day 10, did not help his nerves. Javier cornered Mike, speaking in a low, panicked Spanish that Mike barely understood. "Mike, el perro. The dog, it's a sign. The lights are flickering in the old wires. It is a curse, a cake on the dog. I can't touch the high voltage with a cursed dog. The syrup, it is bad karma." Mike sighed, rubbing his temples, which were dusted with plaster. "It's foam and felt, Javier. It's breakfast. It's not a demon. Just get the 220 line run for the fridge." "No, the cake is a lie," Javier insisted, pointing dramatically at Bear's fluffy form. "Look at his eyes. They're judging my wire gauge. He knows I used the wrong connector." I intervened before Javier short-circuited. "Javier, no demons. I promise. But I understand. The pancakes are too earthly. Tell you what, I'll put him in the office, but only after I tell you that the pancakes were blessed by a high-ranking pastry chef. And tomorrow he's going as an astronaut. Space is neutral, right? No demons there, only cold, clean vacuum." Javier's eyes widened. "Astronaut? Like the moon?" "Yes, the moon is good. No bad luck from the moon." "Maximum space neutrality achieved," I assured him. Javier went back to work, visibly relieved. The contractors were now fully invested. My silly revenge project was their daily dose of therapeutic, dark humor. They were betting on what costume Bear would wear next. The whole crew was watching the show. The costumes intensified, designed to be visually confusing rather than intimidating. My log was meticulously maintained. Susan, meanwhile, went from annoying neighbor to full-blown nemesis, leading to the highly anticipated and mandatory police interaction. My new phase focused on outfits that were objectively, physically impossible to be intimidating. Bear was now a master of the straight face, which only made the outfits funnier. Day 13. Giant lunchbox. Bear looked like an oversized, extremely fluffy sandwich container, complete with a foam sandwich sticking out the top. I posted the photo to my private log with the caption, "Threat assessment. High risk of cheese consumption, low risk of mauling. Primary danger is to carb-conscious onlookers." Day 15. Full llama. This was a masterpiece of fluff. A tall, white, shaggy costume with a ridiculous, dangling neck fringe. It was serene, majestic, and utterly non-threatening. I had to practice the walk with Bear so he wouldn't trip over the fringe. He looked like the world's most peaceful Muppet. Day 18. Traffic cone. Simple, bright orange, and perfect. The sight of a giant, sentient safety cone trotting on 4 paws was simply baffling. I reasoned in my log that a dog dressed as a safety cone was inherently safer than a normal dog. Susan had been suspiciously quiet for 3 days, which I knew meant she was brewing a tactical nuclear strike involving bureaucracy and the police. I was right. It happened on Yama Day. I was outside the Barkery site with Mike, discussing the tile pattern. We settled on a high-gloss checkerboard of white and dark gray paw prints, when the black and white cruiser pulled up. Susan was watching from her bay window, a triumphant, awful smirk plastered on her face, probably sipping chamomile tea. 2 officers emerged. Officer Reyes, young, serious, dressed impeccably, and Officer Johnson, veteran, weary, looking like he'd rather be fishing. Officer Reyes approached me, reviewing her clipboard with the gravity of a federal agent. "Sir, we received a complaint of an ongoing public disturbance involving an animal wearing disturbing and escalating apparel." "Are you Leo Peterson?" "I am," I said, putting my hands in my pockets. "And this is Bear. He is currently dressed as a South American camelid. He has been fully briefed on his rights, officer. He only answers to Justice Woofington." Officer Reyes managed to keep her expression neutral, but I saw a faint twitch in her jaw. Officer Johnson just sighed. "The complaint is from Susan Miller," Reyes continued. "She specifies animal harassment, public disturbance, and impersonating an authority figure, referencing a previous uniform, possibly the UPS outfit." "Ah, yes," I nodded sagely. "The classic intimidating llama maneuver. Well, officer, I have a fully documented log." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos, showing her the gallery of costumes. "My purpose, officer, is to combat the initial allegation that my dog is intimidating. I am actively trying to make him a safer, more culturally significant presence on this street." I read directly from my log, the dramatic contrast between the subject matter and my serious delivery being the key. Exhibit C, the ballerina. Threat level, 0, unless one has a phobia of Tchaikovsky or pink tulle. Exhibit H, the traffic cone. Objectively safer than a bear dog. I am in full compliance with all leash laws. Can you, Officer Reyes, please specify the code section violated by a large dog dressed as a llama walking on a public sidewalk?" Officer Johnson, the veteran, shifted his weight. "Mr. Peterson, the complainant alleges you are doing this to intentionally provoke her. She used the term, and I quote, weaponized whimsy." I looked at the llama, who was now peacefully drooling on the sidewalk. I looked at the officers. I looked at Susan's house. "Officer Johnson, I submit that the llama is the opposite of weaponized whimsy. It is a gesture of peace. I have replaced fear with high-concept absurdity. I am merely following a strict, legally sound protocol to ensure my dog does not violate a person's visual harmony." Reyes finally cracked. She turned her head away, her shoulders shaking faintly. Officer Johnson, defeated, just shook his head, looking like he wanted to trade his badge for a fishing pole. We can't cite you, sir. There's no law against llama costumes. Just keep him on the leash, please, and ensure he's not obstructing traffic." "Understood, officer. Safety first." The police left, having been forced to confirm the legality of my project. I narrated my internal victory dance. I had forced the state to validate the aesthetic merits of a llama costume. The sweet taste of victory lasted exactly 2 hours. That afternoon, Mike called me, his voice tight with professional anger. "Leo, we're held up. The city just sent a formal notice. The sign permit, the big neon biscuit, is on ice, delayed indefinitely pending a historic aesthetic review." I slammed my hand on the counter. "Susan, she's relentless. This is costing me money, Mike." "I know," Mike grumbled. She's claiming the neon biscuit violates the street's historical aesthetic guidelines. It's a zoning technicality that somebody definitely brought to her attention. We can't finish the facade, and we're burning payroll here waiting. This was serious. She was hitting my ability to operate. Fine, I said, pacing. We pivot. We fight bureaucracy with interior opulence. Mike, we can't stop. Let's make the inside so incredibly beautiful and structurally necessary that the city will be forced to approve the exterior sign out of sheer cultural guilt. Let's focus on that paw print tile floor. I want the grout to sparkle. I want the custom dog showers to look like something out of a spa catalog. If we can't be harmonious outside, we will be gloriously, aggressively beautiful inside. You got it, Mike said, his voice regaining his typical flat resolve. We fight bureaucratic nonsense with bespoke tile. I like it, but you're paying extra for glitter grout. Later that day, while picking up a bag of concrete mix, I found a cheaply printed flyer Susan had put up near the community mailbox. It detailed an emergency neighborhood association meeting. Topic: Review of commercial zoning abuses and introduction of new pet appearance bylaws. She wasn't just stalling. She was going for a formal legislative victory. She intended to use the meeting to formally declare the Barkery a nuisance and pass a law that would ban my costumes forever. This was the final battle, the political climax of the entire saga. I looked at Javier, who was finishing up some high-voltage wiring, having overcome his pancake fears with the help of the astronaut costume. He approached me hesitantly. "Leo," he said quietly. "The dog. For the meeting. No llama. No cone. Something powerful. Like a businessman. It will bring good business luck. Something that says, I follow the rules, but I will also sue your pants off." Javier had accidentally given me the best idea yet. If Susan was bringing formality and legislation, I needed a countersuit, a figure of authority that was simultaneously a massive, fluffy joke. I found the tailor's shop that evening, explaining my highly specific needs to a confused, but ultimately intrigued seamstress. I commissioned the ultimate power move outfit, a miniature tweed suit, small gold-rimmed glasses, and a tiny vinyl briefcase. Bear was no longer just Bear. He was Justice Woofington, attorney at Paw. And he was ready for court. The final showdown was imminent. The night before the mandatory neighborhood association meeting, I couldn't sleep. The stakes were suddenly terrifyingly real. A silly feud had snowballed into a fight for my new business, my life savings, and my civil liberties. The right to dress my dog as a large piece of fruit without bureaucratic intervention. If Susan won this vote, the Barkery would be crippled, and my source of daily entertainment would be revoked. I spent the evening with Mike, who surprisingly showed up with coffee and a printout of the Barkery's projected 5-year operating expenses, emphasizing the new tax revenue it would generate. He was unexpectedly, fiercely supportive. "You need to show them the money," he said flatly. "And you need to keep the lawyer dog calm. We need his composure." Bear, meanwhile, was being fitted for his ultimate uniform, the miniature tweed suit, the tiny wire-rimmed glasses perched perfectly on his giant nose, and the vinyl briefcase dangling from his mouth. He looked less like a dog and more like a high-powered, slightly overwhelmed junior associate in the firm of Woofington and Associates. I dubbed him Justice Woofington. He seemed to understand the gravity of the moment, carrying his massive head with an air of solemn, canine gravitas. The setting was the stuffy community hall, smelling faintly of old coffee, mothballs, and the general anxiety of suburban politics. About 30 neighbors were packed in. The crowd was clearly split. Susan's 3 glassy-eyed cronies sat in the front row, armed with scowls and notebooks, while a large group of quiet, curious spectators filled the back. Susan was sitting front and center, armed with a gigantic binder of color-coded charts and graphs, which she kept slapping emphatically on the table. She sounded like a highly frustrated prosecutor. Susan delivered a dramatic, performative monologue, complete with a laser pointer aimed at pixelated printouts of bears' costumes. "As you can see from Exhibit B," she declared, pointing at a blurry photo of the lunchbox costume, "this man is intentionally mocking us. He has employed a campaign of weaponized whimsy designed to destroy the aesthetic integrity of our block. The renovation, the costumes, the noise, it all points to a deliberate campaign of harassment and public disturbance." She listed her grievances, citing the audacity of the paw print tile design, which she'd somehow seen, the constant presence of sweaty men in hard hats, the contractors, and the fact that children are now expecting dogs to be dressed as inanimate objects. She concluded with a dramatic flourish, presenting her motion. "Therefore, I demand we pass the Pet Appearance and Decorum Bylaw to ban all non-essential, oversized pet apparel and formally declare the Barkery an unsuitable commercial enterprise for our residential zone." She sat down, breathing heavily, radiating triumph and smug self-righteousness. The chair of the association, a kindly but tired-looking retired man named Mr. Henderson, called me forward. I walked to the podium. Bear, Justice Woofington, walked beside me, maintaining his composure. He placed his massive head, still wearing the tiny spectacles, right on the small wooden podium. I started my rebuttal, keeping my tone calm, conversational, and highly formal, which, when coming from me while standing next to a dog in a suit, felt completely surreal and highly effective. "Good evening, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the association. I represent myself, Leo Peterson, and my esteemed legal counsel, Justice Woofington, here to address the baseless charges of costumed chaos." I paused for effect, letting the audience absorb the image. Several people were definitely stifling laughter, while even Susan looked briefly stunned by the sheer nerve of the outfit. "Mrs. Miller claims my dog is intimidating. My first point of order is to submit Exhibit 1, I said, holding up a full-color printout of the llama photo. I ask the association, does this look like an animal intended to cause intimidation? Or rather, a creature seeking inner peace, perhaps a meditation retreat? I argue that the only thing intimidating here is the sheer force of aggressive conformity advocated by the complainant." I continued, citing her original vague complaint. "Mrs. Miller complained that Bear violated visual harmony. I went to great expense and effort to ensure compliance. The costumes were not harassment. They were a series of daily, good-faith attempts to make my dog objectively less frightening than when he was Bear. I submit my entire public safety transformation project log as evidence of my good intent." I then started reading entries aloud, my voice dripping with mock seriousness. Exhibit D, the traffic cone. Threat level 0. Compliance excellent. Rationale? Who is afraid of a dog promoting road safety? Exhibit G, the ballerina. Threat level low. Rationale? Unless you have a strong historical fear of Tchaikovsky, this dog is safe. I challenge the complainant to find one single ordinance that defines a dog in a tuxedo as a nuisance. This is about personal taste, not public safety. I then shifted the focus squarely to the business and the economic reality. The Barkery is not a commercial abuse. It is a commercial asset. We are renovating a long-vacant building. Mike Kowalski, my general contractor, has confirmed that the renovation has already employed 3 local businesses. We will generate tax revenue. We will offer a safe, clean place for neighbors to meet. I am not trying to lower the tone of the street. I am trying to give it a beating heart and a consistent place for people to get good coffee while their dogs socialize. Suddenly, a voice from the back cut in. It was Mrs. Rodriguez, a single mom from 2 streets over who had several small dogs. "Mr. Henderson, if I may," she called out. "Leo's costumes are the only interesting thing to happen here in 20 years, and my dog, Taco, loves the pumpkin biscuits. The Barkery is a wonderful idea. It's a community asset." An elderly gentleman named Mr. Davies, who had previously been Susan's neighbor, stood up. "I'm tired of all the beige," he said, adjusting his hearing aid. "I say let the man dress his dog. And I look forward to that ice cream. Anything is better than a perpetually empty storefront." The momentum shifted entirely. Susan had relied on fear and formality. I had countered with documented humor, facts, and community support. Mr. Henderson, visibly relieved to be done, called for the vote. The motion to pass Susan's repressive bylaw was overwhelmingly defeated, 25 votes to 4. The next motion, to formally approve the Barkery's operating status and sign permit, clearing the bureaucratic delay, passed unanimously. Susan looked like she'd been hit by the full combined weight of a 160-pound Newfoundland and a disgruntled contractor. She stood up, gathered her binder with a violent, trembling precision, and announced to the entire room, "I am selling my house. I am moving to a gated community in Arizona where rules and order are respected and dogs do not wear tweed." She stormed out of the hall, defeated. I watched her go, giving a small, triumphant nod to Justice Woofington, who merely licked his lips. Case closed. Mike, who had watched the whole thing from the back, approached me, a flicker of a smile crossing his face, the first real smile I'd ever seen him make. He shook my hand, then patted Justice Woofington's tweed shoulder. "Nice suit, Woofington. You want me to start pouring the foundation for a life-size statue of the llama out front?" "Let's start with the neon biscuit sign, Mike. That'll be statue enough. And yes, you and your crew get free artisanal dog ice cream for life." The Barkery opened 6 weeks later, precisely on time and under budget, thanks to Mike's ruthless efficiency. It was a massive, immediate success. The custom paw print tile floor, which Mike finished with the promised, and completely unnecessary, glitter grout, was beautiful. The industrial refrigeration hummed, keeping the dog-safe peanut butter and bacon ice cream perfectly chilled. The front counter was busy with dogs of all shapes and sizes, their happy barks and wagging tails creating a joyful, chaotic symphony. I looked around at the chaos, the good chaos. Kids petting massive dogs, seniors laughing over lattes, the air smelling of fresh coffee and gourmet biscuits. The Barkery was exactly what the neighborhood didn't know it needed. Even the police made a cameo. Officer Reyes and Officer Johnson swung by off-duty for a coffee and a photo with Bear, who was wearing a clean chef's hat and apron. "We just wanted to see the famous Barkery," Officer Johnson grumbled, but I saw the genuine warmth in his eyes. He bought a coffee and a blueberry scone. Reyes just shook her head and smiled. No llamas today, Mr. Peterson? Only executive chef attire, officer. Safety first. I reflected on the irony. Susan's petty nonsense had inadvertently forced me into becoming a beloved small business owner and the neighborhood's fun czar. The construction team had even chipped in to buy Bear a permanent, tiny gold name tag for his apron that simply read, Justice. Susan's house sold within 2 weeks to a family with 3 loud children and a golden retriever that sheds excessively and barks at the mail carrier. I didn't feel bad for her. She got exactly what she deserved: silence, conformity, and an HOA board in Arizona who would probably complain about the shape of her pool, noodles. I still do the daily costumes, but now it's for fun. They are a local institution, often posted on local social media pages. People stop to take pictures. The Daily Walk is a mild celebrity event. Bear and I were on our typical morning walk. He was in his latest outfit, a simple, brightly colored foam traffic cone, a humble, highly visible nod to the police visit. We walked past Susan's old house, where a sold sign stood triumphantly in the lawn. I mused on the lesson. You can't fight absurdity with logic. You have to fight it with superior, aggressive, organized absurdity. I had turned a ridiculous complaint into a successful business and a source of daily community delight. The dog was never intimidating. The costume was the mirror, reflecting the absurdity of the complaint back at the person who made it. I looked down at Bear. He was a massive, black, floppy traffic cone, happily trotting beside me, still occasionally attempting to eat things he shouldn't. You did good, Woofington, I whispered. You changed the world, one ridiculous costume at a time. My phone dinged. A new email from Mike. Need to talk about that statue. I'm thinking bronze llama. I grinned. I still had 45 more costumes in the closet, and it was only Tuesday. So yeah, my dog is still large. He still drools, and he's wearing a traffic cone right now. But he also owns a successful business and has a wardrobe that puts most celebrities to shame. If you ever think about complaining about a dog's visual harmony, just remember Justice Woofington. Because trust me, I've still got 45 more costumes in the closet, and it's only Tuesday. Don't poke the bear, especially when he's dressed as a giant taco.